Hello and welcome to CTV News Across Canada for Wednesday, April 2nd. We've got the top local stories from coast to coast, stories that affect you and the country. Thanks for joining us.
The price change at the pump was almost immediate. Canada's consumer carbon pricing is now on pause.
Now we see a pause and a reduction, essentially, of that 17.6 cents a liter. So it's going to mean that Canadians virtually coast to coast are going to pay hundreds of dollars less per year on gasoline with those big savings.
A prime ministerial directive signed by Mark Carney sets the pricing to zero on gasoline, natural gas, propane, and more.
I'm a pragmatist. So when I see something that doesn't make sense, something that doesn't work, I change it.
Pierre Poilievre isn't convinced that change will stick.
We know that Liberals have not gotten rid of the carbon tax. They've simply hid it from the gas pumps a few weeks before the election.
Drivers are seeing a bit of a price break right away.
Oh, it's very long and complex. It's nothing simple. So, but you definitely notice it at the pump.
Will it make a difference, you think?
Oh, a lot, of course.
But relief on home heating will take a bit longer. A paused carbon tax means savings of about $4 per gigajoule of natural gas.
You're getting billed monthly on that stuff. So it's going to take some time for it to show up on your bill, right? Now, it might be pretty significant, actually.
Consumer pricing is gone for now, but large emitters are still taxed through the industrial levy. Final carbon tax rebate checks will arrive on April 22nd if you filed your taxes already, later if you haven't.
For most middle-class and lower-income Canadians, the loss of that rebate will be pretty heavy relative to the decrease in the price at the pump.
And Jordan joins us from a gas station tonight with more. So, Jordan, could Alberta provide even more relief by ditching the provincial fuel tax?
Tara, it's not likely, at least not all of it. Alberta's provincial fuel tax is set at 13 cents per litre. Now, there is a mechanism for the province to provide some relief based on the price of oil, but we're nowhere near those benchmarks right now. And the Premier today saying that that tax goes towards paying for roads and other large infrastructure projects, and there's no plan to drop it. Tara?
Okay, Jordan, thank you.
This can of beer could soon cost you more now that a federal tax hike has taken effect.
At the same time, brewers have faced all these market-based cost increases, barley, transport, packaging, new aluminum tariffs, all of those things.
In 2017, the federal Liberals introduced an automatic annual inflation-based tax increase on alcohol. This year, the increase is 2%. How much gets passed on to the consumer is up to each brewer.
They will roll out these cost increases and tax increases over time in smaller bites so that there isn't that price shock as the consumer walks into a beer retailer.
Many Alberta wine drinkers can expect to pay even more than the 2% federal tax. The AGLC is increasing fees for what it calls high-value wines.
We have a $40 bottle of wine at our shop, and today it's $40. When this product is out of stock on my shelf and I reorder it, it's going to be subject to a 15% tax by Alberta government, which will equate to about $8 per bottle, as well as the 2% that the federal government is implementing.
Bottles priced between $15 and $20 will see an increase of 5%. A $20 to $25 bottle will be marked up 10%. Anything more expensive than $25 will be marked up 15%. Kelsey Ruse says many customers stocked up on their favorite wines over the weekend.
Just to prepare for this, because they're like, I like this bottle of wine. I know it's going to be more next week, so I'm going to stock up.
The head of Beer Canada is calling on federal political party leaders to address at least the federal alcohol tax after the election.
To one, eliminate this undemocratic annual automatic increase to beer taxes. And second, to roll back the increases that were never voted on by elected members of parliament.
A commitment, he says, was made by Pierre Poilievre today. He says the NDP and Bloc Québécois have also expressed concerns in the past with the automatic increases.
There are many trade complaints in this 397-page report. Quebec's language law, Bill 96, is now one of them. The United States government says it's a technical barrier that could impact trade with Canada.
We won't change our law. We won't change our rules.
According to the report, U.S. businesses are worried about the impact Bill 96 will have on their federally registered trademarks.
Ça, ce sera plus permis à compter du 1er juin.
Starting June 1st, any product sold in Quebec will need to have a French description, and any trademark using a generic term will need to be translated into French. While it's now in black and white, this concern is not new. Last summer, Joe Biden's administration considered some measures in Bill 96 to be barriers to trade and raised the possibility of sanctions. Language Minister Jean-François Roberge says he doesn't believe business between Quebec and the United States is at risk because of the law, which aims to protect French in the province.
I don't think it's reasonable to say that our rule with the Bill 96 are really a problem to make business with the United States.
Opposition parties also stood firm, saying the Trump administration should not be interfering with Quebec's language laws.
There's a consensus to protect our language, so it's a bad thing that Trump is doing, and the only people who can protect our language, it's Quebecers.
We have many, many reasons here in Quebec at the National Assembly, the reasons why we voted against. But that being said, the French facts in Quebec must stay and will stay.
This complaint from the Trump administration is just part of a broader backlash to Bill 96. The language law is currently facing multiple court challenges, but is something Roberge says the government will not change, despite pressure from one of the most powerful countries in the world. Olivia O'Malley, CTV News, Quebec City.
And then she took my phone, she started going through my messages and questioning me about my messages.
This Canadian woman says she missed a flight to Las Vegas after border guards spent hours looking through her cell phone, though it's not clear why. A French scientist heading to a conference in Houston was recently turned away over alleged hateful messages on his phone.
If U.S. border guards ask them for access to their personal devices, do they have a choice?
U.S. Customs Border Protection, CBP, has authority to search any devices of anybody traveling across the border, including U.S. citizens and definitely Canadians.
Immigration lawyer Cindy Switzer says border guards generally used this power in the past to look for evidence of crimes, including drug trafficking and child pornography. But some recent examples show people being denied entry at the U.S. border because political leanings discovered in their social media or messaging apps do not align with the Trump administration and its policies.
The issue is that border officers have full discretion in order to grant somebody admission, and they can deny somebody admission for any reason.
Canadians worried about crossing the border can always bring a different phone with no personal information loaded onto it. That's a good option for anyone who has an old phone laying around, provided they remember to factory reset it before using it. Otherwise, removing social media and messaging apps is another way to keep your data from prying eyes.
Just make sure that whatever you have on your device, whether it's a laptop or phone, is just basically bare bones. And if you are deleting things, make sure that they're securely deleted. And you go into the deleted folder or the trash and make sure they're deleted there as well.
And lastly, check the privacy settings on social media accounts to make sure you're comfortable with any publicly visible posts, which border guards might find by simply Googling your name. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
This viewer video shows the backyard shed and the side of the semi-detached home in flames when Brampton firefighters arrived on the scene around 1 a.m. 3 people were inside when it happened. Neighbor Dave Hathaway lives on the other side of the semi-detached. He says a family member saw the fire and shouted for everyone to get out. They also ran next door to alert the family.
And her window backs onto the backyard, and she saw the flames of the shed, and she woke everybody up. So we got everybody out of the house. Everybody was pretty panicked.
And a second neighbor down the street drove over in his truck and started pounding on the front door.
Occupants were asleep. There was 3 people inside. It was a senior lady and 2 adult siblings. And so, yeah, I had to pound on the door, wake them all up. And then we got them all out, and the fire department was there probably within 3 minutes.
It's absolutely, fire safety is a shared responsibility with us all. So it's, it's great that we have an individual that saw something and took action.
Emergency crews confirmed 3 occupants of the home were uninjured. Firefighters had it under control quickly. The scene is on Merton Road. That's near Kennedy Road and Williams Parkway. Neighbors say this is the second fire in the home in the last 4 weeks.
First time, I think it was an accident. We don't have a lot of details, but we did see a mattress come out the day after the fire that had been charred. In this particular case, we don't really know what happened.
Brampton fire officials say the cause of the fire remains under investigation, but it appears to have started in the shed and then spread to the home. John Musselman, CTV News in Brampton.
Pieces like this size all over were flying through the air.
Embers rained down as Richard Catsmith stood at the end of his driveway, watching a fire tear through an apartment building construction site.
The whole thing was a 5-story conflagration. Just the heat on my face and my driveway was too hot to stand there, 100 yards away.
Fire crews responding to the massive fire just before 5 a.m. on Northside Road in Bell's Corners.
It was horrific. It was just absolutely horrific.
The 5-story, 53-unit building was nearing completion and completely engulfed in smoke and flames when firefighters arrived.
These under construction homes are like a giant campfire. It's wood frame, they're not complete, there's no firewalls, so the fire spreads extremely quick.
Strong winds fueling the fire, putting nearby businesses at risk, forcing the evacuation of Davidson Hearing Aid Center and shattering the windows of the church next door.
We noticed all the windows behind towards this burned building has damaged. It seems, and some walls on top.
You can see from the sign here that it's melted.
Across the street, Donardo's Ski and Wheels also suffered smoke and heat damage. But partner Pamela Spirito says the biggest loss is the much-needed housing.
It was getting so close to being finished, and now look at it. And with the way that the housing market is and that we need housing in the Ottawa area.
By 6 a.m., fire collapsing the building, destroying a mechanical shop in the process as fire crews managed to save surrounding businesses.
We did have residents in the area in residential homes calling 911, worried about embers that were landing on their property. Firefighters were aware of this and ready to evacuate them if needed. It was not the case.
Crews remained on scene throughout the day. The cause of the fire is still under investigation. And firefighters also went door to door checking homes for carbon monoxide because of the thick smoke. That same smoke combined with a water outage at Bell High School forced students to be sent home for the day. Patricia?
No rest for thousands of people still in the dark. Some people won't be returning home anytime soon after Mother Nature's powerful punch. InPower serves Innisfil and says 90% of people have their power back as of Monday. 260 homes and businesses are still in the dark in Barrie. Day 2 of the cleanup continued. All hands on deck and in the air.
And scared the crap out of us. We woke right up. I tell you, it was pretty scary.
While most people in Barrie have their power back, the real work begins with the cleanup. Removing 1,000-pound branches is a meticulous process.
Everywhere you look, something's broken. You can't even go in one square kilometer of this area without seeing something that's destroyed.
Down trees and power lines, forcing many schools to be closed again today. One of the main concerns right now are hydro lines like these ones stuck in the trees or laying across the ground. In Oromadonte, the state of emergency remains in effect.
They're on vacation, so I came just to help them out, just to remove some of the mess.
Neighbor's tree just started coming down. It was like slow motion. We watched the whole thing happen, but I mean, obviously there's nothing you could do. We were just happy it only took out one car. The truck was parked right beside it and not even a scratch on the truck. But
many roads in the township are still blocked by fallen trees and debris. The mayor says it's going to be a bit longer than expected to clean up because of the size of the affected area.
We have over 600,000 hectares of land and over almost 700 kilometers of roadway that needs to be tended to.
Now, for those still without power, it really is still a guessing game. Depending on how isolated you are, it could be a couple of more days. As for the state of emergency declared here in Oromadonte, the mayor tells me it will likely stay in effect until this weekend. Rob Cooper, CTV News, Oromadonte.
Minimum wage is going up in Manitoba. A 20-cent increase in October will boost it to $16 an hour.
20 cents is not enough.
Dennis Koniak works a retail job in Winnipeg and makes more than minimum wage, but he says even then, it can be tough to make ends meet.
I don't think minimum wage at $16 an hour is going to make anybody richer or be able to afford the basic necessities in life.
And he's not alone. According to the Manitoba Federation of Labor, about 72% of Manitobans feel the increase is not enough.
Well, any increase to minimum wage is a good thing. They need a real increase to a minimum wage that gets them to a living wage.
Federation President Kevin Rebeck says Manitoba's minimum wage is tied to the past year's inflation rate. For Manitoba, that was 1.1%. But according to Manitoba's Consumer Price Index, in the past year, the cost of food has increased 2.6%, while shelter increased by 4.8% and transportation up 5.3%.
Low-wage workers are always going to be playing catch-up. They're already far behind. They're already making poverty-level wages. And this law, as it stands today, doesn't close that gap at all.
It's not just workers feeling the pinch.
Wage costs remain as the top cost constraint for Manitoba businesses.
Tyler Slobodian with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business says these minimum wage increases are having a heavier burden on small businesses.
If you're going to increase wages and kind of increase the amount that small business owners are having to pay their employees, we should probably decrease taxes in other ways.
When asked if $16 an hour is enough, Labour Minister Malaya Marcelino pointed to other government initiatives.
We have renters tax credits, homeowners tax credits. We even have $10 a day childcare that we're expanding, free birth control. There's a lot of things that we're trying to do to make sure that we're meeting Manitobans where they're at in terms of affordability.
The minimum wage increase takes effect October 1st. Danton Unger, CTV News, Winnipeg.
A small group of anti-poverty advocates gathered today to protest what they say is a big rate increase from NB Power.
We know that for people of low and moderate income, there is no way that they can afford it.
NB Power raised residential rates by 9.7%, the same increase that was applied a year ago today. The Crown Corporation applied for a 2-year rate increase back in 2023 and was later approved by the New Brunswick Energy and Utilities Board.
Nobody should ever have to make a choice between food, rent, groceries, and hydro.
NB Power says over 50% of the rate increase is attributed to improving the reliability of generating systems, modernizing the grid, and other factors.
Things like population growth, the clean energy regulations that we're working towards, our aging infrastructure that we're dealing with, and climate change as well.
But the 9.7 increase, just too much for many to bear.
For my rent, I have to pay my rent plus utilities, so this is going to affect me and a lot of other people who don't have that included on their rent.
It's a lot, man. Like, there's so many people that are struggling with, like, getting their regular rent paid, and it's just, they don't need to be doing that.
It is quite high, but I feel with aging infrastructure and inflation that's out there, NB Power is in a stuck between a rock and a hard place, I think.
Clark says the cost of everything is going up, including electricity.
We have to cover the cost of providing service. We are basically break even in terms of our revenues covering our costs.
NB Power says energy efficiency programs and equalized payment plans are available for anyone struggling to pay their bill. Derek Haggett, CTV News, Moncton.
I'm here with you, so please don't cry. When tears fall down, think of my smile.
Nearly 9 months after her son's death, Faye Dzikowicz thought she'd have some closure over her son's death. The SIU has finally released its findings, but closure now feels further away.
It's pretty indescribable. I feel like I'm reliving the pain and then some, trying to match paramedic reports with what the SIU says. None of it lines up. I can't make sense out of it. It keeps me up all night.
The SIU report clears officers of any criminal charges despite Nathaniel Schofield dying while in police custody at the Provincial Police Detachment in Rockwood last July. The 36-year-old was arrested in connection to a domestic violence incident, and the report outlines that overnight at the detachment he became very ill, and by 10:24 the following morning he had no vital signs. The report says Schofield overdosed on fentanyl and meth, with cocaine also in his system, but his mother Mother Faye doesn't believe those drugs were the culprit.
If they knew or thought this was actually an overdose, which I don't believe in a million years that someone overdoses 14 hours later, I really believe it would have came out long ago and they would have loved to say that.
She says Nathaniel was prescribed medication that was lethal to come off of, and he didn't have access to it in his cell.
I believe that they are trying to put my son in a really bad light, and it's more about taking the focus off of the neglect and the pain he suffered all night long while in their care.
2 doses of Narcan were administered according to the report, but a defibrillator was not used. A fatal mistake, Faye says, but the officers cleared of any wrongdoing is not a surprise to her lawyer, Davin Charney.
It's not an institution that builds trust between the families who have lost loved ones on that very first day, being misled by the OPP as she sits in court the whole day expecting that her son, who had already passed away, she's sitting there in court waiting for him to appear so that she can assist with getting him released.
Charney says he will continue to help Faye's fight, starting with a police complaint through the Law Enforcement's Complaints Agency.
And ultimately, there will be a coroner's inquest some years from now, unfortunately, where all of the circumstances of Nathaniel's death will be examined.
A painful and long process, but one Faye hopes will bring peace to her family, especially Nathaniel's kids, her grandchildren.
I think he'd be very proud of me. I think they're going to understand everything once they get older.
Spencer Turcotte, CTV News, Guelph.
Ben Martin's Bartel says tariffs won't have a huge impact on his farm because he focuses on selling locally.
I only want to sell locally. I am a small producer. I produce food, not commodities.
But for some in the pork industry, bringing home the bacon could be more challenging. Last month, China announced a 25% tariff on Canadian pork as part of its response to Canadian tariffs on Chinese EVs, steel, and aluminum. Sask Pork says China is a major market.
It's about $500 million right now is what our exports to China are, so it's significant.
Sask Pork says the tariffs will have an immediate impact on the meat processing plants, and if they stick around long term, it will impact pork producers' bottom line. It says it's also keeping a close eye on the U.S., saying it's concerned about potential tariffs on live pigs. The National Pork Producers Council, which advocates for the U.S. pork industry, is calling on the Canadian government to exempt American pork products from any retaliatory tariffs.
I certainly understand where U.S. pork producers are coming from. I don't think anybody wants tariffs on pork. We're an integrated market. It's served us well over the years.
Sask Pork is encouraging people to buy Canadian pork products. Martin's Bartel says he's seeing a surge in demand as more people look to buy local.
I'm happy if people are looking at buying locally. Your local businesses, these are your neighbors, these are people your kids go to school together. You're supporting people in your community.
Stacey Hine, CTV News, Lanigan.
This was the Energy Court encampment site last week. The city confirms it contracted a crew to clean up areas that were determined to be abandoned. There were tents, electronics, clothing, furniture, and drug paraphernalia among the debris, all hauled to a dumpster in the middle of the encampment.
We'll put a notice on the tent to just alert someone, we will be removing this tent in the next little while if you don't show back up or you don't need anything here. And then we make efforts to clean up those abandoned tents and encampment items. We try to make sure that we're working with the people living in encampments so that they can also keep their places clean as much as possible.
The city says 16 people are still living in Energy Court and did the cleanup after bylaw officers determined there were some sites where no one was living anymore.
Often even the people that are also living in the encampment can kind of tell us, oh no, he's moved out of town or he's found housing or things like that. So we know that it's abandoned. We certainly don't want to be taking anybody's personal belongings. That's important to them. But it is very common for people to sort of abandon an encampment when they move on to another situation.
This is Energy Court after the cleanup. A big improvement as the melt exposed what was under the snow and left behind. The city confirms there are currently 188 people living outdoors at encampments across 32 sites and says more cleanups will be done as needed, with the city paying for them. Alana Everson, CTV News, Sudbury.